Okay, great, fantastic. So, my name is Marie. I work in London and I'm a teacher and a teacher trainer. And I'm going to talk to you today about something which I think is really important when it comes to teaching. Right. And it is this. Okay, can you see the slides?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, great. Fantastic. So, Lexis, the key to fluency. So, today what I'm going to be talking about is these three, or I'm going to be attempting to answer these three questions. What is Lexis? Why teach it? And how can we teach it? Okay?
Yes.
Great. So, I'm going to start with a story, or two stories. These are two little boys that I know. They are both English speakers, but recently they were visiting their grandparents in Spain, and their grandparents speak Spanish. And these two boys have grown up listening to Spanish because their father is Spanish, but they didn't really speak very much Spanish. But they've been there for about a month now, and so, they're starting to try things out a bit more. And the boy on the left, Leo, um, when he's speaking, he gets really confused by the differences between English and Spanish. So one of his cousins came up and asked him why he wasn't playing, and he said, "I'm cold," and in Spanish he said, "I am cold." But the Spanish way of saying that is, "I have cold." And so his cousin was really confused, and he was really confused. And they both kind of looked at each other like, what do we do? And then he turned to his mum and he said, "Spanish is strange. Spanish is really strange." Oh, you've gone again. Okay. Whereas the other little boy, Alvaro, he's only 5, and he didn't he didn't have a problem talking to his cousin, because you know what he did? He just said whatever he wanted, because he learnt quite early on that if he spoke in Spanish to his granddad would give him anything he wanted. So he learnt phrases like, "Look at me, granddad," all together. So Leo is looking at language in terms of grammar, and Alvaro is looking at language in terms of meaning. How can I get what I want? Yeah? Yeah. So what do you think? Do you think your students are more like Leo or more like Alvaro?
I guess more like Leo. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's quite common. And so they want to find rules even at a really young age. But really the rules, they're just so confusing. And they don't help so much with fluency. And so I think what we want is we want our students to be more like Alvaro, that they know what they want to say and they say it so they get what they want. So, sorry? I didn't hear that. It didn't come across. Sorry.
So they want to convey a message.
Yeah.
Communicate, use language for communication more than for students to use language for communication, to convey a message rather than remembering rules.
Yes, exactly. Okay, great. So, what is fluency? Basically, fluency can be broken down to 3 things. They know what to say, they know how to say it, and they know when to say it. So I've got a story of another little boy. I can't remember how old he was, maybe about 2. And he was walking down the street with his mum, and he saw a taxi at the side of the road. And he went up to the taxi and he patted it and he said, "Sorry, taxi." So in this situation, he knew exactly what to say. He knew how to say it, but I don't know why he was saying it. So the when wasn't clear. Maybe in his head, he did something bad to the taxi. I'm not sure. But you need all of these 3 things to really be fluent in communication. So how do we teach students these things? So I've got 3 questions here that I'm going to answer, hopefully. What is vocabulary and what is Lexis? How do we store language in the mind? And how does this contribute to fluency? Whew. Okay, so what is vocabulary and what is Lexis? I suppose traditionally, when we think about teaching, we think about vocabulary and we think about words: apple, happy, boy, girl, and yeah, just words. And this is really useful. But we can also think about it in terms of Lexis, which is units of meaning.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Chunks of meaning, exactly. So, by the way, it's 3 words, but it has 1 meaning. And this is really important because we store language in the mind in this way. It's like a web of associated meanings. So in our minds, we're not like a dictionary with word, 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 word. We're more like a phrase book, you know, like I don't know, at the sports center, these are the phrases I use. Or in a restaurant, these are the phrases I use. So how does this contribute to fluency? If we can recall those chunks really quickly in the right situation, we become much more fluent. Yeah. So do you want to have a talk together? Do your books usually teach vocabulary or Lexis? Do they usually look at words or phrases? What do you think?
I guess both, because sometimes they use separate words and sometimes collocation, like strong storm or heavy rain.
Yeah.
At the restaurant, so they use both.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. So, what does this mean for us? So obviously we need to look at collocations and look at patterns as well. So this is a bit taken from one of your books.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you recognize it?
Grade 6, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so here we've got the word time.
Nice time, great time.
Exactly. So one of the ways we can look at these is getting students to look to the left and look to the right of the words that we highlight. So if you look at time, what comes before it? Have a nice time. What comes afterwards? At summer camp. What comes before it? Had a great time. That's fine. Okay. So this is kind of what it looks like when I write it on the board. So did you have a good, great, wonderful, fantastic time at summer camp or at school? So it's worth, in my opinion, looking at this on the board and then getting students' ideas of what they want to say. So maybe they don't want to say at summer camp. Maybe they want to say at school or at home or with your friends or, I don't know, wherever they want to say. It's also worth looking at things like, you know, students can say, well, you know, can I say, did you have a terrible time? It's like, can you say it? Yes, but it's not a normal question. But you can say, I had a terrible time. So it's using what's in your course book to explore a little bit what the students want to say, but also what I suppose is more natural to say as well. So this have fun, have a fun time. Which one would you normally say? I had fun or I had a fun time?
I had fun or
Yeah, had fun, had fun. So I had fun, I had lots of fun. But I think if we don't point this out to students, they can get really confused and then they put all of the adjectives in. So it's about kind of working with what they want to say and then what is common to say. Okay, so here are some collocations which occur in another one of your texts or the same text. Can you find the verbs which go with the nouns here? So accident, what is it?
have an accident.
Exactly. Excellent. Head. Banged her head. Exactly. So all of these texts have really, really useful collocations in them. And that's a fantastic thing, I think, because have an accident is a really strong collocation. Break an arm is quite a strong collocation, but you can also break other things, break a leg, break a finger, break a toe, I suppose, and bang, this, oh, it's just lovely. It's not something that adults do very often, but children, they bang their arms, they bang their legs, they bang their feet all the time. And actually, it's amazing that this comes up, that you can teach it like, ow, I banged my arm. Okay, so this again is a task that you can get students to do as a race. If you give them these words, then they can look back at the text and they can find the words that go with these particular words. So if we can encourage students to notice and store language in chunks, then they become more fluent because they don't need as much time. They don't need to think as much like Leo. They don't need to translate word for word. They can be more like Alvaro. They think of the meaning and they say it. So they're also more accurate and they're more confident, which is kind of a wonderful thing. Okay, where am I up to? Right. So how do we, that's kind of the what and the why. So what do we teach? Why do we teach it? But then how do we do this? So first of all, we need to get our students to notice the language. So I'm sure you do all of these a lot. Stories, songs, chants, flashcards, lots and lots of exposure to language. And like I was saying before, noticing tasks. So it depends obviously on the age of your students, how you're going to do this with them, but they can be quite fun. So you can do matching tasks. So give them the nouns, they have to find words which match with them. Okay, board work, like I did before. Vertical extension is when you write the words like good, bad, terrible, and you get the students to give you words as well. Circling keywords, look left, look right, and word snake. So this is a word snake. I downloaded this from the internet. It's a template, and I just wrote lots of collocations in it. This is kind of morning routine ones. So you can get students, they have to be quite good and able to recognize them, obviously, to divide them into words and then into phrases. So wake up, have a shower, brush your teeth, make your bed, get dressed, have breakfast, all of that kind of stuff, so they can see where the meaning begins and ends. Okay. And they can also look at opposites, find odd ones out, categorize phrases as well, or put things in order, anything to get them seeing and then playing with the language a little bit. Okay. So once they've noticed the language, then they need to know how to say it. So I'm sure you do quite a lot of pronunciation work with your students. And this is really, really important for teaching chunks and teaching chunks fluently. Partially because it's quite fun, but also partially because if they remember the muscle, because pronunciation is all about muscles, if they know how to say it and it comes out quickly, then they don't have to think about it. And particularly in terms of intonation as well. So remember the little boy Reggie when he went up to the taxi? He sounded sad. He sounded apologetic. He knew that when you say sorry, you have to sound kind of sorry. So let's take this sentence. We went swimming every day. How does she feel when she says this sentence? Yeah, happy and really excited, doesn't she? Yeah. So for me, then, if I'm doing pronunciation with my students, then they need to say, they need to sound happy and excited when they say something like this. So where's the stress in the sentence? We went swimming every day. Swimming, absolutely. So if they can smile loads and loads and say swimming, can you do it? Swimming. Swimming. Then we can build around that. So instead of going, we went swimming every day, they go, we went swimming every day with joy and happiness. Yeah? Whereas earlier in the text, you have this whole thing like, how awful. And I think again, that kind of working out the emotion behind it and working the pronunciation, the intonation into it can really, really help students with their fluency. And then, of course, they can put their own things in. So what makes you happy when you do it every day? Sorry, I couldn't really hear it. Well, I have things like, you know, I spoke to my friends every day. Anything that I think they want to say that makes them happy in that kind of situation, you could then write on the board as a chunk. They remember it, they say it, they can stand up, tell everybody, practice the pronunciation so they're really getting it out fast and quickly and fluently and with happiness, because that's kind of what this person is trying to express. Okay. Whew. So they need to be able to remember it really quickly. So we need to make what they say, this articulation, automatic. And there are lots of different ways of doing this. So a running dictation. I don't know if you've ever done this before.
Yeah, we have an idea about running dictation. Have
Yeah?
anybody running dictation? Have you tried it? Yeah, some teachers have tried it.
Fantastic. Well, it's really, it's really, really super useful for remembering chunks. So as long as what you take out are more than 2 or 3 words, then they have to remember the chunk. And as they're doing the running, they're repeating it to themselves. So this is a bit from one of your course books. and I just took out what the students were saying, what these three boys were saying, because these phrases, I can't remember. Oh, sorry. I have no idea what's under them anymore. Sorry. The phrases that they say are really natural and really useful. And if the students are repeating them over and over again as they run, then they'll be much better able to remember and use them quickly. So yeah, I did this obviously on PowerPoint, but I guess you can just write it out on words, or however, on words, on phrases, on paper. That's what I mean, paper. Gosh, sorry. These ones. Okay, have you done these kind of races before? Yeah. Absolutely. So this is really a nice one to do as a competition as well. So you can, what I generally do is I put each one on one piece of paper in the middle of the room. So maybe there's 5 or 6 pieces of paper or 10 pieces of paper. Each team has to take one piece of paper. They run, they write it down in order, or what they have to do is they run, they have to work together to remember it, and then they have to come up and repeat it to me. Yeah. So sometimes they don't need to do the writing. Sometimes they just need to, all of them go, okay, she she fell down the stairs, she fell down the stairs. And then when they can say it really fast, they come up and they normally shout, she fell down the stairs. And then it's like, yes, okay, go get the next one. Yeah. Okay. This one, half a chunk challenge.
So it is a kind of matching activity.
Almost. Yeah. So what they do is they get the beginning, and then they have to try and remember the end, or they can finish the end themselves. So these are all phrases from earlier. Do you remember what the ends are? Did you have a...
Last time, did you have a good time?
I fell.
Downstairs.
We went...
Swimming or cycling or whatever.
Exactly. We went swimming or cycling every day. So yeah, sometimes it can be, it depends on the level of the students, obviously, but the stronger, or the, I suppose, older students are better at this one, whereas younger students probably are not as good. Okay. Memory. I'm sure you've played memory before.
Memory games.
Yeah. You know, so you've got collocations. One set is in blue, one set is in red, and they have to turn them over to try and remember. Yeah. Okay, so that's memory, half a chunk challenge, unjumbling, and running dictations. So do you want to talk together which ones would be most suitable for your students, the students you're teaching at the moment?
I guess running dictation, because we have large classes here in Gaza, it is not that practical unless you play it in group. But let the whole class run at the same time. It creates chaos sometimes.
Yes.
Jumpling with string, it can be done, I guess. And the matching activity use memory, and teachers, and sometimes they adapt the activity to suit the level and the number of the students they are teaching.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it can be really difficult with very, very big classes. That kind of, these kind of tasks sometimes. But yeah, it's all about adaptation and finding ways, I suppose, to make it work for you. Okay, great. So, in summary,
Do you want to add something?
No, I would say that
I'm really sorry I couldn't hear. Oh, hello. Do you have a question? Yeah.
I would say now that every exercise you suitable for low graders, for example, like the first, second, third, and fifth grade would be so suitable for them because it's like much easier and understandable for them. However, other exercises like unjumbling and other things would be much more suitable for the higher graders, like sixth, seventh graders.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think you do have to be careful of the level of the, or the age of the student. Yeah.
You cannot say that actually you can use anything you want, but adapt based on the grade. You can use the memory for higher, unjumbling for the kids, so it's up to you. Adaptation, manipulation.
You need to manipulate the whole exercise.
Of course,
Yeah.
You
can do it.
cannot judge.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Fantastic. Do you have any more questions?
More questions, comments? Okay, no more comments.
Okay. All right, great. So, in summary, I think it's really important to teach Lexis and not vocabulary. That even at a very, very young age, students can look at chunks of language and not just words. And they can look at, or not like in terms of grammar, but look at it in songs and stories and chants so that they're remembering whole phrases. It's great that your books sometimes look at collocations as well. That's fantastic. But there are probably more that aren't being explored. So look for them in your lesson materials. Help your students to notice them. Help your students say them. I'm sure you do already. And help your students recall them. Because these memory activities, they can be really fun. They can be really competitive. They can be really fun. They can help each other. They build confidence and they build accuracy. And they don't have to be all about running around the room necessarily, but it could be about students testing each other in pairs, who can say things the fastest, who can say things the loudest, who can say things the quietest. All of those kind of things can really help develop their fluency. So how can you as teachers prepare for these kind of things? What I generally do is I look at dictionaries online. I don't know if you all have access to the internet all the time, But sometimes when I'm going to teach, no?
No, we don't have access to internet in our classes. No.
No, no, I wouldn't have thought so. But yeah, sometimes I just ask people, oh, can you say this? What happens with this? Usually that's my kind of go-to. And yeah, I think it's just about being really, paying a lot of attention to the phrases that are already there in your materials. Okay. Oh. Sorry?
But they can be encouraged to check words online at home,
Yes.
the students.
Yes, absolutely. So if the students have access to the internet, they can definitely check words online, they can check phrases online, or you can give them homework. Like, look at this word bang. Find 4 words which go with it. Check it at home. Yeah, absolutely.
Homework assignment.
Okay, do you have any more questions or anything else for me?
Any more questions? I guess one of the problems we have that in each unit, the students are introduced to a big number of vocabulary and, as you said, chunks of language. Then the second unit talks about something else. Then it is difficult for students to remember them all. Okay, I guess there is a kind of recycling after a number of units, but the students feel it is difficult for them to remember all the vocabulary after studying for a term or for the whole year. Any suggestions or tips for yes, for letting students remember vocabulary?
Yeah, I think once you've done all of these recall activities, then it's about maybe doing spoken or written tasks with them to help them remember, to help them put them into practice. So I get my students quite a lot to write dialogues, to make posters, maybe to make up their own stories using all of the vocabulary, and then display them around the rooms so that they can go back and look at them in a really meaningful way. And maybe there are lots of recycling activities that you can do, but I think the thing is, if you've decided maybe, okay, we're doing this unit and now we're going to look at these collocations, and you do maybe a memory game, then keep those memory cards, and maybe the week after or 2 weeks later, you do the memory cards again. Yeah, as a kind of warm up, because in my experience, if students are playing a game, they don't mind doing the same game again later and later, or again and again. What else would I say? I think, yeah, I think making something that they can go back to later. So posters on the walls with what they've learnt can be really helpful. Stories that they then publish can be really helpful. Yeah.
Student Arabic system is different from Arabic spelling of some words. For example, like neighbor or like. So, any tips for recognizing the words that have high frequency?
High frequency.
I'm talking about the written the spelling of words. Because
Yes.
English is very different from Arabic.
Yes, it is very different for Arabic. So my as far as I know, where people or where Arabic speakers have most problems with spelling is with the vowels. Is that right in your experience?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have words. We have silent letters, and sometimes we have E and A pronounced as E. You know.
Yeah.
The vowels, I guess.
Yeah.
And the silent letters.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one way that I try and support my students whose first language is Arabic is when I write it on the board, I write the vowels in a different color. I don't know if you can do that. But so if I'm writing the word neighbor, N is in black, EI is in red, and then B in black, OU in red, and then R. Because there's this thing called vowel blindness that a lot of the time students don't even pay attention to the vowels. So first we need them to pay attention to be able to see them. So I think that can be really helpful. And then once you've worked out the words which they spell wrongly all the time, you can do unjumbles again. So you give them all of the letters, they have to put them in the right way. You can do correction tasks. So look at these words. Okay, in teams, can you correct the spelling? Or you can have discrimination tasks where you have one that's right, one that's wrong. They have to choose the right one. But I think the most important thing is that they see the vowels. So yeah, making sure that whenever you write it down and then they write it down, that it is really clear to them what they are. That would be my tip.
Okay.
Is another difficulty about the class that our students
Just a minute.
another difficulty with our students that they will write with the vocab, but when they want to put them in sentences or in other context, they found it very difficult, and they can't write against the word that they memorize. I know in these sentences, and we did this they find this, and they know the meaning. You will use the word.
So they know the meaning of separate words, but they cannot use them in context. So coming to this.
Yeah, so they know the meanings of words, but they can't use them in context. I think that's a really common problem. So how do we help our students with that? I suppose we really exploit context in the classroom. So looking a lot at patterns, like I was saying before. So if students know the word, I don't know, happy, or they know the word, I don't know, what's another word that they might know?
If feel happy, it might be easier to use it in context.
I think sometimes there are many key words for the main word that we want to use it in a sentence.
So happy, you can teach them.
I
feel
can
happy.
Yes, I can go online. Why? To find or look for some information. We can connect information with go online. There are many words that we can connect to other words. Yes, we have many keywords. Such when I say to go online, look for information. Okay, sometimes to say forecast when we find the word weather. There are many keywords that give us a
Collocations again.
Yes, just like collocation.
Well, it's a good idea if we, for example, add some ideas from our mother tongue, and it's recommended that we should maybe like merge some mother tongue sentences for them. Well, it's a good idea. idea if you could expand the knowledge to facilitate the understanding of how to use the context, how could they translate? And it's a really important point, for example, Lexis, use a translation and merge it with text.
To compare the mother tongue with
Yeah.
English.
Yeah, definitely. I think translation for collocations can work really, really, really well because they are different in different languages. They're different collocations, and that contrast is really interesting, I think, particularly with higher level or older students. You can get them to look at, okay, well, how do you say this in your language? How do you say it in English? Does it matter that it's different? Because the meaning is the same, and that's the most important thing. And as long as the students are aware of that, I think, yeah, but I think translation can really, really be helpful.
But sometimes it is good to connect the meaning directly with the English word, especially for young learners.
Yeah.
Connect the English vocabulary directly with the meaning.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I think as long as we're doing it at chunk level and not word level, because that's where the problems come in, I think. And that's what Leo found as a problem, is he was doing words translation instead of phrase translation. Yeah. So if we teach chunks more and they translate more as chunks, then they become more accurate and they have less problems in their communication. Yeah.
Lexis translation sometimes. It depends on your students and the age of your students. Yeah. Now, Mary, what about words that have more than one meaning? Is it recommended to teach one meaning each at a time, or use more than one meaning at once?
Yeah, I would suggest teaching the meaning in the context. So if you teach words with lots and lots of meanings, like, for example, time has quite a few meanings. If you teach all of the meanings at once, it's really confusing. I've done this before and really, really confused my students. So I think we need to look at, in this situation, this is what it means. And that's it. And then maybe your students say, well, can it mean something else? And you go, yeah, in a different situation. But in this situation, this is the meaning. And also, I think then maybe it's worth, if students are looking up words online, then they look at, we need to teach them how to find the meaning in that situation. So if you say, okay, go and look up the word bang, there are 4 meanings. Which one is the correct meaning for this situation? If they start being more comfortable finding the right meaning, then they'll be better able to research language themselves, which is kind of great. Okay, any more questions?
I want to ask something about translation, because you said that translation is a very good thing to have the meaning of somewhere. I want to say that some teachers ask their students to translate all the things at home as preparation for them. But some parents, complain about their students to translate all the things word by word. Parents complain they didn't want to translate. Some people say that we don't know English. How can we our children translate all the things? Yes, some teachers do that. Is it helpful for students to translate all the text word by word? No, it's not acceptable. I know that, but she said
sometimes it is good to compare, but not translating. A discussion about the use of translation.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I could only hear a little bit, but so parents complain that students aren't translating too much as much as they need to, or they complain that they're doing too much translation. I couldn't quite get that.
No, they are don't want the children to translate all the text.
But I guess it's not common.
It's uncommon.
Yeah.
Do you think that it is good to get students as a preparation for the lesson?
Sorry, I didn't hear that question. It didn't come across.
Take the mic.
Sorry, you're cutting out. I can't hear anything at the moment. Hello, where did you go? Ah, there we are. Hello.
Can you hear us, Mary?
Yes, I can hear you now. You're back. Hello.
You're speaking English.
I think our students are doing this systematically. They think in Arabic. So everything they're doing, they're thinking a French course, like a big English course. And believe me, it's so hard. I speak fluently Arabic and English. And sometimes I was asked that in America, which language do you think? Arabic or English? I couldn't or specify because it was too hard for me. But when I took French as a third language, I was like translating everything into Arabic because the system. So I was like so shocked, and I knew why my students struggle because French and English are the same origin, right? Pronunciation, articulation is totally different. So I was like having the text in front of me, listening to the text, but I couldn't have a grasp of it because everything is different from me. So I had to think in my own language, like the first or English, in order to understand the third language. So you cannot judge your students. They're so young. They think in Arabic. They're like abilities are not that high. So you cannot say, if I get you to prepare this, they didn't think in English. No way. Doing everything in Arabic because their first language is Arabic. And believe me, I tried this, it was so hard.
Well, that is okay.
But
it is okay for me, for example. I will tell you, how could you, for example, start learning another language? You build on your previous experience, like you have two languages, and you started learning and compare, for example, we say, for example, my name is like Sean Abdel, for example, blah, blah, right? Yeah. So like you start like connecting. What is the next language telling you? Then we start learning another language. So it's okay at the beginning to start, connecting this idea. What is called, we have like a map in the mind. So for me, for example, and I understand that students, that this is their way, and it's acceptable. As long as they learn.
Do it without intention. Like, not intentionally, that they're doing it in, like, yeah, that's the way to do it. But having like word translation not acceptable like all the time. Like, yeah, this means blah blah blah, no way. But our students, like, I don't know, the native language increase a lot in learning English.
But it's okay. It's preferable if you start learning the chunks and link them with the mother tongue.
Not word
and
by
then you
word.
could learn like how to intermingle the chunks with the words and the phrases we have
easier
in that English.
to
I mean, in the other
fluency.
language.
Yeah.
But I mean, I am saying my point of view out of an experience. I've tried this, and I don't know, just like they're doing it, like maybe I don't this myth that they think that we're not learning anything, and
So Mary, are you following the discussion?
Yes, I am.
Hello?
I am in bits. In bits.
So we're discussing the impact or the effect of Arabic on learning English and
Yeah.
the use of translation, translating single words or chunks,
Mm.
that kind of discussion.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah. Sorry, it cut out again.
Okay, so let's move from this point. Any more questions before we end? Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? Ah, Salman is not here.
No.
Okay, another question, one more question.
Sure, of course.
it's not a question. It's just to know outside never think of as a teacher whenever you are teaching pieces of vocabulary. So can you give us something, for example, never do that when you are teaching. Okay, we know what to do when you are teaching vocabulary. Our Lexis or chapter. But if you want to very specifically tell us what never to try to do, because if you want to do something we don't need for our courses.
So it's like do and don't. So never do this. Yeah. I guess she said something about not exposing the students for so many. Anything else, Mary, not to do when teaching vocabulary?
Not to do. Do's and don'ts. Okay. Do look at the meaning in the context. Do look at collocations and chunks. Don't give too many meanings at once for the same word. And is there anything else? Don't for vocabulary. I guess don't expect that your students will be able to remember everything right at the beginning. The first time, yeah, you know, that's not really how we learn. We need exposure and exposure and revision and revision and revision. And I think sometimes as teachers, we can be a little bit like, but why? Why don't you know this? We've done it 5 times. So I think just keep remembering that that they need loads and loads and loads of practice, and particularly practice at chunk level or collocation level rather than word level. And remember that it can be fun. Don't do things the same way all the time. Make it different. I think that would be my tips.